So this is actually pretty hilarious because basically throughout all of the lefty infighting drama that's been going on, that's been completely torching the left, all mostly starting with force the vote, which is, a pretty good idea. Forcing the vote is a pretty good idea. But what's interesting here is Jimmy Dore has kind of been burning every bridge that's ever been created or possibly could be there. So Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report sent out a tweet, okay? He said, "My good friend," seemingly in jest, "Jimmy Dore is liking tweets calling me the boutique left and that I'm jealous of him, and that's not including the outright smears of me he boosted yesterday. Dude, you're old enough to be my dad. Grow the F up." Now, what's interesting about this, of course, is that Mike Figueredo was actually pretty good friends with Jimmy Dore. He was at one of his live shows, if I remember properly, so certainly they had some kind of connection. They certainly were not, against each other or anything like that. And so basically, and we're going to look through the tweets that he liked, this is something often that Jimmy Dore does, right? So I think it was Michael Brooks that first kind of honed in on this, which is that, he coined the term passive-aggressive progressive, which I thought was very accurate because a lot of times Jimmy Dore won't outright respond to somebody. He'll retweet or favorite something somebody says to the other person because he doesn't want to respond. He started to do that with Sam Cedar and other people. Being very passive-aggressive. You don't know what being passive-aggressive means. It's basically like, subtweeting someone, not being direct with somebody, but still taking a subliminal shot. Tweeting about somebody without adding their name. Very passive-aggressive thing to do. Liking a tweet that of someone responding to someone else or saying something about someone else. Very passive-aggressive. Now, what's interesting here is from some of the tweets, basically, actually, we should just look at the source tweet here. So basically, Mike Figueredo of the Humanist Report was basically groaning that people on the left were crying about Donald Trump being banned on Twitter, which is really interesting given all the circumstances of what he did and his incitement of what happened at the U.S. Capitol. As you guys know, incitement is not protected under the First Amendment. Now, I will say that the concern about all this power being held by Mark Zuckerberg and these douchebags, I agree that is definitely something very concerning and we need to watch out. And we do need to watch out for any potential crackdowns that could happen of civil liberties and stuff like that. But Trump being banned on Twitter, totally good. Very good idea. Makes total sense. Again, incitement is not protected under the First Amendment. And I don't know how case law exactly would go. I know Brandenburg is the case law case for incitement. I think there would be a pretty good argument made, but I'm not really sure. But this guy sent out a tweet. It says, "By the way, if your positions on force the vote and war mirror the establishment, i.e. no criticism of Russiagate, no opposition to warmongering of any kind, no support for Julian Assange, no support for force the vote, then you are establishment media masquerading as indie media." So what's interesting here is this is sort of taglining this line of attack that Jimmy Dore has been using. And that's to basically call these indie outlets, and this is something he does, right? He's basically turning everyone into a fraud. Everybody in Jimmy Dore's eyes, except for himself, is a fraud, okay? Tarnish the name of all progressive politicians, tarnish the name of all progressive outlets, and so he's been doing this for a while. You're MSNBC, you're MSNBC. Now, someone like a David Pakman is definitely MSNBC light, but, he's starting to do this with everybody is something he's been saying. But what I want to do real quick here is I actually want to show you video footage of what Mike Figueredo's coverage and opinion was actually on the force the vote issue. Check it out.
But let me just say this. I do hear people who are a little bit skeptical on the left about this plan, because in the event a floor vote for Medicare for All actually does come up and it fails, could the Democratic Party establishment then use that as evidence, basically, that, it's just, it's not popular enough, and if Democrats don't support it, then we shouldn't have it. Yes, that's a possibility, but I think that we can use it more to our advantage than they can use it to their advantage, right? The failure to pass Medicare for All during a pandemic, that's better for us when we're playing politics than it is for them in actuality, because when you have the support of the people behind you, I think that you need to use that to your advantage. Now, for the leftists who don't think that this is a good idea because it will ultimately fail, so basically what this comes down to is political theater, right? That's the counter argument. And that's fine. I kind of see that argument, although I side more with Justin Jackson in this is good for us in terms of optics and getting them to go on the record denying their constituents healthcare during a pandemic. But even if it's the case that you don't necessarily agree with the strategy of, getting a floor vote on Medicare for all, ultimately what Jimmy Dore is doing is really important. He's getting them to not just roll over and die and accept that Nancy Pelosi will be the Speaker of the House. It is overwhelmingly likely that she will become the Speaker of the House again. But with that inevitability, understand that there are things that you can do. Use your leverage as a bloc that is growing in Congress to perhaps deny her Speaker of the House unless she gives you something, anything. Fight. That's the main thing. Because ultimately, we're all disappointed. Like individuals who helped these folks get elected, you're just not challenging leadership enough. You're not challenging leadership enough. And so what this is a cry for is for you to just do something, fight harder. And I get it, right? There are these interpersonal relationships, there's pressure. And part of the reason why the left is losing is because they always get steamrolled by the establishment. I mean, look at what happened with the negotiations for the HEROES Act. Pramila Jayapal and Mark Pocan did actually fight Nancy Pelosi to include a paycheck replacement provision in the HEROES Act, but they got steamrolled and they just kind of were left hanging. Like, even if you don't win this battle, be vocal and try to use this as evidence for the next fight to kind of set yourself up. Well, since we didn't get this, I want this time. Like, the problem with the left in Congress is that they just don't challenge leadership enough. Nancy Pelosi does not get the resistance that is deserved for someone as out of touch and corporatist as she is. And Kyle Kulinski made a really good point. He said, look at the way that the Tea Party put pressure on Republican leaders. You had 2 Republican leaders step down because, the Tea Party was so uncompromising. And we don't have that equivalent on the left because I don't know if the block isn't big enough, so they don't feel confident, but you have to fight. Like, you have to put these things out there. Like, don't just accept that Nancy Pelosi will be the speaker. Now, if all you need is 10 to 15 votes to deny Nancy Pelosi Speaker of the House in that position again, do something to get her to bend to your will. Get some more concessions.
So this is essentially what's going on here. I mean, what you have going on here is Jimmy Dore is turning on people who are even extreme supporters of force to vote, which is what you just saw there. Now, for Jimmy Dore, I think if you aren't somebody who is willing to call AOC and all of the progressives a complete sellout and a fraud, I think that you don't meet the bar for him. You don't meet the threshold for being a progressive. So you're an MSNBC shill, CIA paid shill, is what Mike Figueredo is. But as you can see, Mike Figueredo pretty shocked that he would do this to him. I don't know why he's surprised. I saw this coming from a billion miles away. But what's more interesting is to just look at some of the tweets that Jimmy Dore actually favorited that were in response to that tweet. So when you look at some of these that he liked, I was a subscriber on YouTube for a couple of years and noticed he did little on debunking Russiagate even after the Mueller report, not much. He said nothing, most likely worried of losing subs if he said the truth or because he's a TYT affiliate. The great reveal continues. So it's all this mass conspiracy of fraudulent behavior. And also, this is something I noticed from the Jimmy Dore camp. I know I'm on the receiving end of a lot of this. People say, oh, you're just saying what TYT says. Yeah, I don't even watch TYT. What the fuck are you talking about? So there's just these kind of trends and narratives that you notice, or just talking points essentially is what they are. That you hear from them as the same thing. It says, I haven't watched the Humanist Report, but it doesn't seem to be guided by Marxist theory. During a time of crisis, having a theoretical guide is necessary. As Lenin points out in What is to be Done, a lack of theory can turn a progressive into a reactionary. I don't even know if Jimmy Dore is a Marxist. Is he a communist? I don't even know. It says, I've watched a couple of bits and pieces of Humanist Report, painfully suffered through it, I must add. My take was/is their analysis are basically a dumbed-down rerun of the infomercials at TYT. It is all possible to dumb them down. So again, he does not have the same take on TYT as everything. This one says the boutique left, yuck. Mike Figueredo is also a socialist, just so you guys are aware. I'm not aware of anybody at TYT who is even a socialist either. Even those identifying as the progressive left can have Trump derangement syndrome. So yes, agreeing with Twitter banning Donald Trump off its platform is now Trump derangement syndrome. As we saw what happened at the Capitol. So these people, and I saw, it was so unbelievable. this is so dumb it warrants its own video. But Jimmy Dore actually retweeted a tweet from Nino House, and it said, oh, if AOC worked as hard as she's doing right now to impeach Trump, we would have Medicare for all in a week. Like, that kind of lunacy, there's no rehabilitation of that. I'm sorry, it's a wrap at that point. You're that delusional, you're that fucking insane. It's not true, and it's just crazy to even have a speckle of a thought of that kind of thing. So these kinds of people, they're still saying that Biden is worse than Trump, even after we've seen that Trump was calling the Georgia Secretary of State, telling him to find 12,000 votes, telling Mike Pence to overturn the election in a historic move in which the vice president has a very ceremonial role, and all they do is open up the envelopes and read out the electoral numbers. They don't get to deem electoral votes, valid or not. That's for Congress to do, not the vice president. It would be an incredibly authoritarian move. The vice president effectively picks the president in those situations. So he tried to do all of these things, right? He tried to file bogus lawsuits, extremely fascistic behavior. And by the way, he didn't get banned because he was a fascist, okay? He got banned because he was inciting people to do what they did at the U.S. Capitol building. So it's just none of this makes any sense. You can just see it says the mask has been off on that guy for a while now. I mean, Jimmy Dore just lives in this delusional world where everybody but him is a CIA paid shill, you know what I mean? Working with NATO and all these people, and is part of whatever. It's absolutely insane. If you're not Jimmy Dore, you are a sellout. And just so you know, even if you're in Jimmy Dore's camp, I know you guys are hostage. The people who are in Jimmy Dore's camp, your Katie Halpers, your Brianna Joy Grays, these are all people. I saw another dumb tweet from Brianna Joy Gray saying that Green New Deal put it on the map when AOC went to protest in front of Nancy Pelosi's place. That's a really horrible argument because it really didn't do anything in effect in terms of the Green New Deal having any real shot of passing or anything like that. These people are held hostage because Jimmy Dore's fans are their fans. And so if they don't do everything that Jimmy Dore wants them to do, then they're going to lose all of their money, all of their audience, all of their everything. So they're held hostage. But trust me, you'll deviate even slightly, and he's going to turn on you, just like he's turned on Mike Figueredo. I'm suspecting the next person he's going to turn on is actually Kyle Kulinski. I'm not sure when that's going to happen, and Kyle Kulinski is an even more fervent supporter of force the vote than Jimmy Dore is. Certainly provides better arguments in a more rational manner. But as you can see, Mike Figueredo, even a very strong supporter of force the vote, not a Russiagator, any of this crazy stuff. But he will turn on you as well. He will turn on you. So it's really just sort of a circular firing squad at this point. Anybody who isn't Jimmy Dore, no matter what you say, no matter what you do, he will turn on you, and you will then be a CIA paid shill sellout who, is being paid by, I don't know, take your pick, Clinton and Yahoo, whatever, NATO pay, you're on NATO's payroll. Just so fucking stupid.